So I think we are here live. It's the 10th of July and it's a Friday. And great to see so many of you already here connected. I can see Reno, Mark, Vegas, Podrick from Abu Dhabi, Joachim, Linda, New York City. Lily, great to have you here, and great your timing worked out this time. Faisal, hello Faisal. Pradeep from Toronto. Roger, great to have you here and looking forward. You've got some great questions in the last few, so looking forward to your questions. James Leach, Providence, Rhode Island. Moses, Johannesburg. Stefan Nad, great to have you on here. Stefan, I hope that you'll come here and we'll go and see a Champions League football game one of these days when the world opens up and you can watch Barca play again. Alan Noonan, great to have you. Roman, Murad, Smile, Dina Lenko from LA. Must be early morning there in LA. Hope the sun is rising for you. Tony from Murcia. Pablo, hey Pablo, que bien, ¿qué tal por Bilbao? ¿Estáis surfeando allá? How are the waves? Rajat, watch me. I'm watching you here. Barakat, Orlando, Torres, Pablo from London, Solomon, Motivation DZ, Honorat, Amit, Dirk. Hey, Dirk, great to have you here. So, again, questions always give a bit of structure to these sessions. I think I'm perfectly capable of just talking for an hour, but I love it when your questions help me move what I'm talking about to practical issues that are important to you. Hey, Inglese and Pelole, great to have you on here. Rathinam, Chennai, great to have Chennai here. So the theme for today, and very often as I go through the week and I'm thinking about, what do I have that is valuable to share with the world, with each of you here on this Friday, I was thinking about limiting beliefs. So there's a list of 5 limiting beliefs that I just wrote down that I think are fairly insipid in almost all human beings. And I'd love to just get your questions about how this stuff works for you, how you approach it, what questions you have about making this real in your life. But 5 limiting beliefs that we hold in our heads that limit us. Number 1, belief that our future self will be better than our current self. Belief that me in a few years' time is going to be better, smarter, stronger, richer than me right now. And that delaying is okay because in future I'll be better. Number 2, belief that I have lots of time. Belief that there's always going to be enough time. Belief number 3, belief that some actions are too small to really be important. It's too small an action to really make a difference. Belief number 4 is belief that I will be able to recognize good opportunities when they're in front of me. Belief that I know enough to recognize who can really help me, what good opportunities are sitting there, where the opportunities are in my life. Belief that the person I am right now knows enough to be able to predict what things in my life right now are going to be of value in the future. And the 5th belief is the belief that I can multitask. The belief that I can do 6 things at a time or 2 things at a time. The belief that I can speak to my daughter and check my mobile at the same time without it having an impact on both. And what I want to just do is talk about how these 5 beliefs get into us and how they affect the way you live out your life. And I can see we've got quite a good group on with us today. And what I want with you guys in the questions, so Roger, your questions are good. Dirk, Inglese, Nushar, questions try and bring me back and keep me focused on what is valuable to you. But first, I want to switch over to our chat cam here and just talk about this insipid belief that pretty much every human being I've come across holds, which is that my future self will be more capable than my current self. My future self will be smarter, wiser, have more friends, have more insight, have more perspective, and be better able to deal with problems than my current self. And this comes out in my own life. There's times I've sat down and tried to solve a problem and it becomes hard. And I just put it to my side thinking, when I'm 50 and I know more and I've had a lot of more experience and I really know this stuff, I'll come back and be able to handle this. And there's a lot of things that I push off into the future. There's a lot of subjects that I'm asked to teach on or give speeches on. And I just think, me today at 47 years old, I haven't lived enough to be able to bring wisdom to that idea. Later, I'll know better. Later, I'll be able to speak better on it. And I think there are some things that perhaps it is true. I will know something different in the future, but my future self won't be better. My future self will be the same self I am now. And if something's difficult for me now, it'll be difficult for my future self. Freud said, all neurosis is the avoidance of necessary pain. And I think this touches on this idea that there's very often a difficult conversation that I could have today, or I can wait. There's people that I need to say, I don't like the way you behave towards me. I need you to stop that behavior. I need to put limits. And I wait for the future. And what Freud was saying, every time I avoid a pain right now and just postpone it out into the future, I'm creating neurosis. And neurosis, in a way, is a flawed mental process, is a delusionary process where you distance yourself from reality and become quite disconnected as a conscious entity from what is going on around you. But it is mentally unhealthy to hold this belief, mentally unhealthy to think that the problem that you're pushing into the future and you're rationalizing it because you think in a few years or in a few weeks, I'll have more resources, I'll be stronger, I'll be better able to cope with it. No, you won't. And very often what is a small problem right now, left alone, it doesn't stay the same. A problem left alone festers and grows and gets more rancid and rotten. So this belief that I will be better in the future, I will be smarter in the future, I'll have more resources in the future, so I can avoid dealing with a certain problem, avoid dealing with a certain person right now, avoid doing the hard work that's important for my career right now because I'm going to wait for a better time. This is a very dangerous belief to allow to float around in your mind. You are not going to be smarter or better in the future. You're going to be the same person you are now. If you take the action, you will certainly have skills. But waiting and pushing off difficult things into the future doesn't mean that you're going to be a better, stronger, fitter self in the future. It means you're going to be a more neurotic, more delusional self in the future. So for me, I know that this line of argument my mind uses a lot when it wants to push off work into the future. And one of the things that I've still not accomplished in my life is to write and publish a meaningful book. I wrote and published a book, but it was it was tick the box. It was writing a book so that I could say I've done it. What I have never done is finish the book where I really lay out the important stuff that I want to share with the world. And each time I sit down to write the chapters and put the work in, I allow this self-belief that if I wait till next year, I'll have a few more ideas, I'll have a bit more fame, I'll have a bit more prestige, I'll have more clarity, and I use it as a way of procrastinating. So I wonder whether you make use of this belief that the future you is going to be better, stronger, more capable to deal with problems. So therefore you can delay problem resolution right now into the future and let your future self handle it. This is an insipid belief, and it doesn't even look flawed, which is the dangerous one. So let's switch back to our chat cam here and just see what this is provoking. And good to see some good ones on the chat here. Orlando from Boston, Barakat from Afghanistan, Solomon from Nairobi, Kenya. Watch me, great to have you, fan of the videos. Dubai, Edmonton, Iran, Sohaila, Iran. We've got Iran and Iraq, so this is globalization via YouTube here today. Motivation DZ, give advice about speaking. Well, I can go back to the basics of speaking, motivation, and body language. Speaking and body language, we can touch on that. Juan Wanner, how do you distinguish belief from hope? I love that question. Roger Parker, I missed number one. So insipid, damaging self-belief number one is my future self will be better than my current self. That I can put off solving the problem I have in front of me for a future version of me that's going to be better. And I find that this is a very insipid belief in me that allows me to procrastinate, to delay things, to push off difficult choices, difficult conversations into the future. Jamos McKenna, I don't believe it, Conor, today started writing a letter from my future self. And, this exercise, I think in one of our previous Quaranstreams, live streams, I shared one of the most powerful exercises that I have done. And when I go with a group of leaders on a retreat, it's one of the exercises that we work through, which is to write a letter to your future self. I like, Jamos, this idea that you can write a letter from your future self. And I think anything that helps you move out of your current moment and see life from a bigger context is a very helpful thing in getting clarity on what really is important. So, looking and imagining that you're 10 years older and sitting down and writing a letter, imagining you're 10 years older and writing a letter about what you're grateful for 10 years from now that you started 10 years before. Once you start going on it, it's amazing how your mind is able to put yourself out into that context and you can see things that you wouldn't be able to see otherwise. Mark Bradley, I love that quote. If in doubt what to do next, take the next right step. And I remember that there's a book called Do the Next Right Thing. And it sort of says, the book is divided into 4 parts talking about these 4 words. Do, which is action is important. So do the next right thing. Well, we'll switch over to our talk cam and I'll just talk on this. So this saying, if in doubt, do the next right thing. And it's one of the most powerful tools to break you out of inaction and inertia. If in doubt, do the next right thing. And what I want to talk is about the 4 different words. The first word is do. It's not think, it's not plan, it's not talk, it's do. Action changes the future. Thinking about action changes nothing. Planning action changes nothing. Only action changes things. And too often we think that thinking is the tool to move forward. Often the way we get clarity in life is not by thinking our way to clarity. It's by taking action. And the moment you take action, suddenly the clarity starts to come. But it needs to be that first committed step and then clarity comes. So do. The second word is the, not a, the. The difference between a and the is the specificity. A is any, the is pick one. So do is action, the pick one. Next. Next is not do the 10-year plan, not do the thing that you're going to do 20 years from now. Do the next thing. What's the next step? And I love the word next as, wherever you are in a project, wherever you are in the relationship with someone, what's the next step? What's the next thing? And to me, do the next right thing. Thing is project, action, do it. But to me, this idea, right thing, is not do the next thing that they're asking for. Do the next thing that the world asks of you. Do the next thing that is easy. It's do the next right thing. And the only way you discover what's the right thing is by looking inside you. if you have to look outside, you're not going to do the right thing. You're going to do the easy thing or the complacent thing or the expected thing. The word is right. And the only way you figure out what's the right thing is by looking inside and listening to yourself. And I love this phrase, do the next right thing, as a wonderful tool to just stop and reflect. If you're facing inertia, if you're finding it hard to get moving, if you're finding yourself stuck, at the top of a page, just write down, do the next right thing, and answer these questions. What's the action? What's the specific? What's right? And I guess right is what's hardest to answer, but often, and I think, Janice, when you look from a perspective of 10, 20 years into the future, 10, 20 years into the past, that's when right becomes clearer. Not easy, not efficacious, not effective, but what's right? What's the right thing to be doing? And I was on a call with my company just before joining this live stream, and we were talking about this concept of what's right, what comes from inside, what do we know to be true, how do we go back to our childhood and pick up some of the things from our childhood that really had an impact on us, and there's something in that that's a lesson for ourselves. I know Carl Jung believed that your first memory is a very important source of information for you. The first memory you have from childhood. And his view is it's no accident that this memory has been kept by your mind as your first memory. And today in a world where there's a lot of photos and videos, sometimes it's hard to distinguish what's the first memory that you have from your mind. Not the first photo that you can remember because you've seen the photo, but it's something that's stored in your mind. And I remember the first memory I have as a human being is I'm about 3 years old. I'm in Dublin. I'm sat on a red toy tractor. And I remember my next door neighbor, who was probably a year older than me, pushed me off the tractor. So just pushed. And I can remember falling on the ground, being on my back on the ground, looking up at the sky and seeing his face looking down at me. And the question in my mind is, why did he do that to me? And almost my whole life has been a search for the answer to this question. What motivates human beings? Why do people do the things that they do? And that first memory of me being pushed off a plastic tractor as a kid, looking at my slightly bigger neighbor boy and asking myself the question, why? Why did he do that? And that has been the guiding question that has led me to study psychology at university, to be interested in the art of persuasion, to look at why do people do the things they do. And when I interview people, what I'm interested in is what motivates them, what moved them to do the things they did. And I think one of the things that I've learned about human motivation is sometimes we don't understand what motivates us, and that's not a problem. And Carl Jung was of a view that it's dangerous to try to understand too deeply what motivates you. Because by really documenting and putting a recipe and a structure about who you are as a human being, you end up sucking the joy out of life. And there's some things that are just important because it feels that way. And if you try and describe them or rationalize too much, it sucks the meaningfulness out of the thing. So the earliest memory is not to be understood, it's just to be appreciated and just to be allowed to be a guide towards things that are worth exploring in your life. So for me, it was a memory of being pushed off a tractor and asking the question, why? Why did he do that? Why did he do that to me? And that question has been the core of everything I try and learn about, the things I'm interested in, where my curiosity tends to go. With my daughters, I often stop and I'm thinking, I wonder what of the things that they've experienced in their life will be the first memory that they hold in 10, 15, 20 years' time. So let's switch back to our chat cam here. I can see quite a bit of chats going on here. Florian, hey, great to have you here. Ravi, your YouTube channel is more educating than a book. Thank you very much. And in fact, Ravi, one of my favorite poems is a poem that John Wooden, the coach of the UCLA basketball team, also known as the most winning coach of all time, shared as part of his TED Talk. And the poem, no written word, no spoken plea can teach the youth how they should be, nor all the books on all the shelves. It's how the teachers are themselves. And I love this poem for it's not words in a book that teach the youth. It's not what we say that teaches people. It's how our lives are. And an inspiring teacher is not inspiring because of the content they teach. They're inspiring because of the coherence of the way they live their life corresponding to the values that they try and share. So to me, Ravi, I love that a YouTube channel is more powerful than a book. A book, you can just write good words. A YouTube channel is a bit more. I guess what should be most powerful in any of our teaching is our way of life, that our life is lived in a way that is inspiring. And Florian, living in the now, I guess it's an easy thing to say. Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, I've read it, I get it, but I don't spend much of my time with my brain or my mind actually here in the now. My mind has a tendency to jump into the past, into things that I'm proud of, things that I regret, jump into the future, things I'm looking forward to, things that I'm going to be worried about. And I would love a little button here on the side of my head, or a little lever that you could just go, my head has been worrying about the future for an hour. Can I just switch it back to the present and let go? I guess our mind does what we practice. And for most of my life, I've practiced not having my mind here and now. In building a business, you practice putting your mind 10 years into the future, 5 years into the future, and visualizing the business and visualizing why the sacrifice now is worth it for something. So to me, undoing that practice and bringing the mind back to now would be a wonderful thing. So knowing to do it is one thing. Being able to do it when you click your fingers, that would be the power. Where are we on here? Koinur, please tell which book is your favorite. And again, every book depends on the reader. There's books that resonate when you're 15, there's books that resonate when you're 25, and there's books that resonate when you're 45, 50, and 60. I read the book East of Eden by Steinbeck when I was 16 years old in school, and I thought it was stupid. It was an idiotic book. It didn't make sense. How could two brothers that love each other end up creating such problems for each other? I read the same book again when I was 42 years old, and I thought Steinbeck was so insightful about how human beings truly are, what we're truly seeking for, and how brothers who love each other can be the cause of such pain for each other. So Koinor, the question on, I have my favorite books, and probably I have my favorite books from different moments through my life. As a child, as a teenager, my favorite book was Frank Herbert's Dune, which is sort of a 2,000-page 9-novel whole book. I spent a whole year of my teenage years where the most important thing to me was Paul Muad'Dib, the central character of the Dune book by Frank Herbert, and I just loved that book. For me, the book that I think has had most impact on me is Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. But again, if I'd read that when I was 16, it would have just gone over my head. I think sometimes we need the life experience such that we're able to relate to what's being shared in the book by the author. So it's a tough one to recommend a book in the absence of specificity. So Koinor, if you let me know what's the challenge you're facing, where are you, what are you thinking about, what's your challenge right now in life, what are you trying to achieve, then we can answer that. See, what is the limiting belief behind the desires of some people to always be right by proving others wrong. Oh, so Tony, I take it that's a Tony question. Let's switch over here. And why do we get such joy from proving others wrong? So a friend of mine, Bob Glazer, has a weekly newsletter called the Friday Forward, and I very much recommend that you find Bob Glazer on the internet and subscribe to his every Friday Forward email newsletter. Today, what he talked about in this was pro and anti, and he talked about that the way we engage with the world is either pro things or anti things. And there's a set of people that even when they disagree in a pro something way. So I disagree with something, but I'm pro something else. So maybe the local government wants to build a smelly factory in the neighborhood because it will allow them to raise taxes to finance the kids' school that they want to build. So I'm anti the building of this factory in our neighborhood, but instead of just saying no, I think, what can I be for that allows us to achieve the other end, the building of the school? So maybe I say, well, I'm pro building a digital startup hub and work center and encouraging digital businesses to come here. And the same tax that we can get from them is going to finance the school. So instead of just being anti the factory, people who are pro something never just say no. They say no to that, but here's a solution that will allow us to achieve the end. And Bob, I think in the newsletter, was saying, it's very easy to be anti. And perhaps, the idea here is, it's now beach season here in Spain. So once or twice a week, myself, my 4-year-old daughter, we head to the beach. We bring our buckets and spades. And when I go to the beach, I don't lie on a towel just soaking in the sun. I tend to lie down for about 3 or 4 minutes before I get up, swim in the sea, and then me and my daughter start building a giant sandcastle. Usually starts with a giant hole that we'll fill with water and then build a structure around it. And a sandcastle, a really good sandcastle, can take you 2 hours to build. And not all of those 2 hours is satisfying process of building. Do you know how long a sandcastle takes to destroy? It takes about a minute. A small kid comes across, and the sandcastle that me and my daughter have spent 2-3 hours of our time on the beach slowly building, one nasty kid in about a minute or less even, just jumping up and down on top of it, can destroy it. So being anti things, destroying things, taking things down is always quick and effective and dramatic. Building something up is slow and unrewarding for most of it. And I think, this idea, it's so much easier to destroy. It's so much easier to point out how someone else is wrong. What I hope that I cultivate in me and cultivate in anyone around me is this similar idea that you're not allowed to be anti something without having another proposal. And it's so easy as a human being just to point out how someone else is wrong. And I think Donald Trump has made a career out of dismantling anything Obama has done. And one of the challenges of politics or companies is that in building something, you have to make lots of agreements. And what you end up building is never as perfect as the idealized situation. So the person who's anti things can compare whatever is being built to what perfection would look like and complain that what has been built is not perfect. But perfect doesn't exist. It only exists in our minds and in our fantasies. The real hard thing of life is not knocking things down. It's building something that allows to achieve our end but improves the situation for everyone. So, to me, why do we enjoy knocking things down so much? Well, I guess it's instant gratification. I myself, when the tide starts coming in and we're about to leave the beach, myself and my daughter jumping on up and down and flattening our castle in 30 seconds. It's fun. There's a lot of laughter. But it took us 3 hours of building in order to allow us to have the 30 seconds of dismantling. And I guess, society, we're unaware of how much building of the institutions of society, of the institutions of logic and rationale, for me to be able to speak to you via YouTube, how many thousands of small things have previous generations done so that technology exists, language exists. I speak in words and you can understand these words. Microphones capture my sound and send it down and you can hear a microphone your end. And it's so easy to be blind to how many tiny little positive things have been done in order to create the world that we live in. And it's so easy to point out one or two flaws and say we should just take down the whole thing. And I guess, right now in society, if you watch the news, there's a lot of people that are against things. It's very easy to be against things. But leadership is not what you're against. Leadership is what you're for. And leadership is hard. Leadership is not pointing out that something is wrong and then walking away. Leadership requires pointing out that something could be better and then doing the work to bring together the resources to build the better thing. And accept that probably your idea of the better thing, once it's done, it's not going to live fully up to the idea that you had. I find I teach in a business school. And, an MBA over the course of 2 years will study 600 cases. And in a case, you read a business challenge faced by some business in the last few years, and you think, what would you do? And it's very easy to approach it thinking, what have they done wrong? And a lot of MBAs get into this mentality of problem finding, that they just read a case looking for problems, identify 3 problems, and say, here's what's wrong. And I find an MBA with that mindset of searching for what's wrong, pointing out what's wrong. They get a lot of joy by pointing out what's wrong in everything else. But it's a very dangerous thing to dedicate your intelligence only to break things down, because it's rewarding, but it doesn't build anything for future generations. So I guess, Tony, how in society we create a rule that if you want to say no to something, you need to say no, and here's how we could achieve the good end in a different way. Rather than just destroying, how do we say, okay, that path I don't think is the best, but I'm required to offer a different path, or offer an improvement, or offer a way that you can take your answer and make it better. And I think if we could cultivate that in our schools, that pointing out that someone is wrong is 2% of the work. Pointing out how they can improve it, pointing out how they can make it more feasible, pointing out how they can involve more people and make it more realistic. These are the skills and the things that we really want people to be able to do. So it definitely is easier breaking down sandcastles than building up sandcastles. But we want to cultivate leaders, and we want to cultivate a generation of youth that, instead of pointing out what's wrong, they point out how with small changes we can make it better, how we can replace it with something slightly better, and be willing that your thing that's slightly better won't be perfect. It'll be slightly better, and then someone else is going to point out that that too can be improved. So I still build sandcastles when I go to the beach. Hopefully, if you build a big sandcastle next to us, me and my daughter don't jump on it and destroy it, even though it might be fun and rewarding. But it is so much easier to break things down than it is to build things up. But luckily, over time, very few people become wealthy and successful just by breaking things down. Somebody who spends their whole life pointing out how things are broken and wrong and how others have not lived up to their wishes, they might be right, but they'll be poor and they will never change their situation. So however rewarding it is in the short term, it's not a path to any type of significance and any type of creation of a lasting legacy in life. But it can be easy. So let's switch back here. We've got Jagannath, currently reading So Good They Can't Ignore You. The Cal Newport, great book, so good they can't ignore you. And I think Cal Newport, what he says is the most important thing in your life is rare and valuable skills. If you have rare and valuable skills, you gain control over your life. If you don't have rare or you don't have valuable skills, you do not have control over your life. So what I like about that book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, is Cal Newport shows a path for anyone, if you're in your 20s, 30s, how do you create rare and valuable skills? Because if you've got rare and valuable skills, then you get to choose with whom you work, what projects you work on, and what sort of time you want to work. And if you control that, you have the chance of living a fulfilling life. Amit Kale, currently reading Lateral Thinking. Interesting. So let me know, what are you learning from that? And Florian, yes, great question from Tony. Faisal, how can we deal with people who are focusing on destroying all that we built and continue to build it even though they continue to break it? And let's switch over here. So how do I remain motivated to building even as there are people throwing stones and talking down? And I guess anyone who has a YouTube channel, you learn that you've got to ignore most of the comments. Obviously everyone here on this chat are different, but I put up a video on YouTube, and I think the number of people who comment that you have sticky out ears, that you're bald, that your head shines, that you scratch your nose too much, it's funny. When I was 6, 7, 8 years old, it used to really hurt me and annoy me, although I've kind of left that behind when I grew beyond 12 years old. But I've learned that you don't read YouTube comments before you make another video, because a lot of the comments, there are a lot of positive comments, but also the human brain, I find I notice negative things, they stick with me, they get into my mind in a way that positive comments don't. At the end of any course that I teach at IESE, there's feedback given by every participant. And when I receive the feedback, typically it's a sheet of paper where on the front side is all of the positive things that participants shared about the program. If you turn the page over, on the back, it's opportunities for improvement, things that could have been done better. And every time I get this page, I read the front page, I feel good, I turn it over to the back, and the words that I remember and stay with me and stick in my mind are always the one or two negative comments. And even I find my mind thinking, yeah, I bet I know which of participants said that. So, I guess, one, being negative hurts quicker. So there's some ratio in relationships where you should be saying 7 positive things to the important people in your life for every 1 constructive feedback that you give them, because the 1 constructive feedback, the 1 change you'd like to make in another is going to stick with them, and there needs to be 7 positive points of encouragement to drown out 1 criticism. So we're more highly tuned and aware to the negative than we are to listening to the positive. And it happens for me after 18 years of looking at feedback after every course. Somehow 100 people could say that it was the greatest course they've ever been on. It changed their life. I will remember the 1 comment that, you're a hypocrite because you said this, but then you didn't do it. So negative things stick, negative things hurt, negative things take a lot less effort and energy to throw out there into the world. And I guess, how we change the culture of the world so that we create a world where in order to be against something, you have to be for something else. You don't get to say, I'm against this, I'm against that, I'm against the other. You have to say what you're for. And you can only be against something if you can say what you actually are for, what you actually are going to dedicate your effort and your energy into. So, Ravi Mittal, one thing which I appreciate in your talk is you give credit to a lot of people and their work, and also give a lot of interesting article info and good books. Yeah, I think there's some people say, Conor, it would be better if you just shared what you know rather than constantly using other people's books and other people's theories. But I think I've learned a hell of a lot about the world from books and from people. And very often I am repeating what I've learned that someone else has done the hard thinking to do. Paolo, what can motivate people to change their beliefs? Oof, that's a tough one. And we've only got 13 minutes to go, so I don't think we've got time now. But there is a book that, maybe in one of our future live streams, there's a book on changing minds. And it looks at what actually must happen for someone to change their mind. And the place that the book begins is asking you, how many times in your life have you really changed your mind about a belief you deeply held? And in the book, it suggests that probably in a normal human life, there are only 6 times that the normal human being has stopped, taken a belief that they've held for a long time, realized that it doesn't hold true, and changed their mind. We do not change our mind very easily. And very often, our intelligence is at service of our belief. Once we believe something, once we identify with something, our intelligence is just used to prove that we are right. And a lot of the challenge in life is to stop this automatic process in our minds that the moment I identify with something, the moment I like one outcome over another, my mind just goes, okay, prove that you're right, prove that you're right. And in business, I love Ray Dalio, to quote another. Ray Dalio has a book called Principles. And Ray Dalio is a hedge fund investor. And I think 40 years ago, he was doing really well and then had a huge loss. And the huge loss wiped him and his company out. And it forced him to rethink everything about how he and his company took decisions about investments. And he realized that in that investment, he had let the company know that he was positive. And the moment that a leader kind of says, I'm thinking that we're going to invest, everyone around you will find it very hard to say no. And Ray Dalio has spent the last 40 years building a company which ensures that he gets the opinions of others before he lets them know what he thinks. Because the moment that he tells the company what they think, everyone's mind immediately starts trying to show that he's right. And as a leader, sometimes really creating an environment where you force people to help you see where you're blind, force people to help you see where, even though it doesn't feel like you're wrong, the results are showing that there's a flaw in the way you approach things. Jamos, have you tried reading the negative comments first? Not yet. And I think that would be a hard one. I think human nature, I like reading the good stuff. I get a kick out of the good stuff, but maybe you're right. I know when I eat food, one of the things I was talking with my daughters yesterday is when you're eating food, do you leave the best mouthful for last or do you eat the best mouthful first? And, I think the ideal is to eat the stuff you least like first, leaving the most tasty mouthful to last. But what does every human being do? They eat what they like first and leave the stuff so that it gets worse and worse as you go. And I guess I'm the same in reading comments. Probably what I need, James, is that when my secretary gets this feedback, she deletes the positive, sends me the negative, and then waits a few minutes. And when I've digested it, gone for a walk, processed it, then she says, now you're ready to hear the really good stuff. Lily, you both use both me and my daughter and my daughter and I. Since English is my second language, can you indicate the subtle difference between the two? I remember learning this as a kid, and probably my English has been Spanishized. I've lived in Spain for 18 years, so I think kind of both in Spanish and in English. So I don't know to what degree my English is representative of the Queen's English or the American Perfect English. And I think my daughter and I is probably grammatically correct. But me and my daughter, I think the Irish poets are famous for playing with the English language. And one of the things that you get when you speak multiple languages is the ability to play with another language. English, if you speak English with confidence, it doesn't matter if you make mistakes. But if you speak English looking to see if the other one can validate the way you say it, then you make mistakes. And I think English, we're very, very flexible. If the meaning is important, we'll listen. But if you're trying to figure out and get validation for what you're saying, then it's not so good. Torres Hospitality Consulting. I see on the shelf, good to great. Yeah, just, where is it? Here. Can you share a couple of highlights from the book? So let's switch over. Good to great. What did I get from the book Good to Great? Well, to me, Good to Great was the first business leadership book that had me stop and think, there's something to it. It's not just well-meaning idealism. There's something to it. And Jim Collins, as an author, I think I've learned more lessons from how Jim Collins is as a person than what he's written in his books. And this is a common thread of how I use mentors in my life. I pay far less attention to what my mentors say. I pay much more attention to how they live their life, how they deal with other people, how they deal with my requests for help or my questions. Jim Collins, I think, has, the book is about ruthless consistency. And that, the businesses that truly build something to last are ruthlessly consistent. The story that Jim Collins shares at the beginning of the book, and I share very often in my classes because I think it's such a powerful story, is the 20-mile march. And at the beginning of the book, The Good to Great, he shares the story of Amundsen and Scott. Robert Scott and Amundsen were two polar explorers that were on a race to the South Pole in 1908. And Robert Scott every morning got up and looked at the environment. On a good day, he walked 50 miles. On a tough day, he would walk 10 miles. And on the really hard days, he would stay in his tent. Amundsen woke up every morning and his team walked 20 miles. The hard days, they walked 20 miles. The easy days, they walked 20 miles. They, no matter what, made their 20 miles. And in the story, Amundsen wins the race to the South Pole. Amundsen makes the journey home, and Scott and his team die on the way. And leadership of a company is leadership of this consistent, steady, daily progress. And I think in our own lives, this consistent daily habits will make a much greater impact on the outcome of your life than any one day of brilliance. The best way I captured this idea in a simple story would be, there's an English sentence: an apple a day keeps the doctor away. And the problem each day is the apple is never just sitting there alone. Today, when we finish this webinar and you go into your kitchen, maybe there's an apple in the fruit bowl and there's a donut or a cake sitting on the other side. And if today, instead of the apple, you take the cake, nothing really changes. No one notices. If every day this week, instead of the apple, you take the cake, Nothing changes. No one notices. No one sees you slightly more overweight. If every day this month, instead of the apple, you take the cake or the donut or the poor food choice, still no one notices. No one says what's happening. But if for 10 years, every day, instead of the apple, you choose the donut, now it starts to be obvious to everyone. Now your belt is showing that you choose the donut. Now people around you can see how you live your life. And Good to Great, this book, is about ruthless consistency, about setting your own life up with goals that every single day you can achieve. So that, here, if you want to write a book, and I know Roger Parker is on here somewhere, he'd be the expert on writing a book. John Grisham, the author of the crime detective novels from the southern United States, John Grisham, for 10 years, showed up at his office with enough time to write one page before he started work. One page a day, and you'll write a book in a year. One page, day after day after day after day, you'll have a book. Most people who want to write a book, and myself included, think, no, I'll wait till the summer when I've got 2 months of free time, and then I'll write the whole book. What Good to Great tells us, what Jim Collins lives in his own life, what the 20-mile march is all about, is that it's consistency. If you do one press up a day, but you maintain it and you're consistent, it will have a much, much more positive impact on your life than doing 100 press ups today, but then forgetting about it most of the other days of your life. Jim Rohn, another of my mentor speakers, says success is 3 simple habits repeated every day. Failure, 3 poor decisions repeated every day. You can't fail with one single decision, and you can't succeed with one single habit. It's the consistency and the accumulated compounding of good habits that really make the positive impact. And it's the compounding of poor decisions that really makes the impact. So one single sale in a business, one single client in a business isn't going to make the business. It's the consistency day after day, week after week, year after year that really makes the difference. And I think that to me is the most important lesson of the book, Good to Great. Consistency of making steady forward progress every day is much, much more important than one great day. And it doesn't matter where you are right now, wherever you are, no matter how bad it might be, no matter how much you're struggling, you can begin 3 good habits. And if you put those 3 good habits into your life now, life's not going to change tomorrow, in a week, in a year. But in the same way that it takes 10 years for the donut to start to be noticeable on the body, it can take a year, 2 years for the small positive habits to start to really pay off. And Jim Collins talks a lot about what he calls the flywheel effect. And the flywheel in a car motor, in a simple toy engine, the flywheel is a heavy wheel that as the machine begins to move, it starts to spin very fast and it's heavy. And what it's doing is building, the flywheel has a lot of potential energy. It has this momentum. And if you can get the flywheel going really fast, then that car or that motor can keep going through a lot of challenges. I think the last book from Jim Collins focuses back on this concept that he first outlined in Good to Great about the flywheel. And each of us in our life have a flywheel. So I'd recommend you go to the Jim Collins website and you can download his PDF on the flywheel and look at, in your business and in your life, what is the flywheel, which is a set of things that if I do this well, it makes this go well, it makes this go well, and it's self-reinforcing. And Jim Collins, Good to Great, ruthless consistency and focusing on the elements that make your flywheel begin to accelerate faster and faster and faster and faster. And once you've got the flywheel up and going as a business, it's very difficult for the competition to reach where you are, because it's not just the place, you've also got this incredible momentum built up into the machine. So let's go back to our chat here. I can see there's lots of good chat. And Jameis, it's like Seamus but with a J. Jameis, I was talking with my wife about, we see our timeline left to right or forward and back. Can you change how you see time, and would it make any difference? I don't know. And I know there are human languages that are written, the script is written right to left. I wonder whether you ask someone who is used to a language that the written script is right to left, whether their timeline would be right to left, that they would see the past on the right and the future on the left. But certainly for me, growing up in a Western culture and using Latin script to write English, Latin script we write from the left to the right and from the top to the bottom. So I see my timeline in that projection left to right. But yeah, I wonder whether someone, before they learn a language, whether they already have a concept that left is the past and right is the future. Harshad, as an employee, how should we invest the salary to practice valuing businesses like a seasoned investor? I think there's many good places to start. Benjamin Graham was the mentor of Warren Buffett in valuing businesses. And I think Benjamin Graham's work on value investing, which is this idea of not speculating on a business share price, but buying businesses that you want to hold for the long term. This is the way you could approach to investing. And it may not be the most effective for making money in the short term, but I think Warren Buffett has shown that it is, if you're able to spend enough years and allow the compounding effect to work. Graham, whoever this guy, what was his name? Value Investing would be the book and the approach to valuing companies. But essentially a company, revenues minus costs equals profit. And the question is, are their revenues higher than their costs, and are they able to invest enough so that their future revenues, their future ability to charge a premium for their products remains in place? Chadia, is being positive and optimistic most of the time, is that being unrealistic? Well, I think being positive is a choice, but it's a pretty good choice. Being happy is also a choice. But it's, to me, it's a far more pleasant approach to life to look at the world in a positive way, to look at the things that give you a feeling of gratitude, than to seek out the things that annoy you, that seek out the things that people piss you off. And I think our mind, left to its own devices, can identify the things to be scared of, the things to be worried about. So cultivating an attitude to the world of gratitude, positivity, and optimism, I think is a very valuable attitude. I ask very often in my classes I've heard thousands of participants answer the question, who inspires you? If you think about leaders that inspire you, teammates that inspire you, who are they? No one has ever said realism, pessimist, people who see reality as it is. The people that inspire us to be of our best are always positive, optimistic, solution-oriented. They're pro something. They're not anti things. They're pro something. So they may be anti what you're doing, but they'll give you another choice of a path to follow. So to me, optimist and positive and optimistic is a good thing in and of itself. Sometimes there are pains that you need to stop and say, actually, this is a bad thing. And that pain will stop you and cause you to make some change. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But positivity and optimism, we need in our leaders. We need in the people around us. A belief that we human beings have the ability to make things better, I think, is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we think the future is going to be worse, we're going to make the future worse. If we think the future, we can make it better, then we're going to do the hard work. And it's hard to do the work to make the future better. But if we don't have that positive, optimistic belief that we human beings have this incredible resource called our imagination, our ability to see a better future, if we don't believe in it and live up to it, then the future is not going to be a better future than the current one we live in. So we're going to come to the end of our Friday, 10th July webcam streaming here. Dina, great to have you on here. Torres Hospitality. It's a great book to just open a few pages and reflect on. But I think I've learned a lot. If you go to Jim Collins' website, he has a lot of free downloads and little articles that are very helpful, just as little things to get your mind going. Kathy, great to have you here. Chadia, great to have you here. Maria Luisa, tudo bem? Great to have our Brazilian connection here. Faisal, motivate myself, absolutely. Inglese, the 5 beliefs. Yeah, we sort of went off topic, but the 5 limiting beliefs that really strangle your ability to be the best version of yourself. The 5 limiting beliefs. Number 1, belief that your future self will be more capable than your current self. Belief number 2, belief that I have lots of time. Belief number 3, belief that a small action today is unimportant. 1 press up today, what difference does it make to my health? 1 word written towards my future book, what difference does 1 word make? 1 phone call to my father, my mother, a person that I haven't spoken to, what difference does 1 phone call make? If you can tell yourself that, you can stop taking a lot of action. Number 4, belief that I will know what's right for me right now. I will know who's a good mentor for me. I will be able to recognize a good opportunity without the help of anyone else right now. This is a very deep flaw in us, the thought that our intuition really knows best. Our intuition only knows what our experience has allowed us to know. What we need to learn now to be the person we need to be in 15 years, we need help from others to help us identify what's valuable and what's important. We cannot see it for ourselves, even though our entire experience of life is knowing where we're right and knowing where we're wrong. But it's a very flawed sense, our intuitive sense of being right. You can feel that you're right and be very wrong. It's almost the most dangerous thing in the world to believe you're right, but the results, if you were to stop and look at them, show that you are consistently wrong. And number 5, the belief that you can multitask. The belief that you can do deep, good, important work while working on 5 different things at the same time. And I know, I don't know who was saying, has read the book So Good They Can't Ignore You. Cal Newport will be very extreme. Unique and valuable skills, you cannot multitask them. The unique and valuable skill that if you dedicate time to develop and become really good at and have a reputation around, it is not a multitasking skill. It is a skill that requires you to focus and spend significant time. And if you do that week after week, day after day, year after year, when you're 55, 60, 65, it will be that flywheel, that incredible momentum that nobody is able to just take what you've built and take it away from you. So on this basis, Mozambique, Yuka Nakasoni, great to have you here. Chamos, great to have you here. Roger, great to have you here. And yeah, I think one of my challenges in life is focus. At least I'm consistent at showing up on a Friday. Next Friday, this call will be 1 hour earlier. So just to let you all know, on the 17th of July, I will be starting the webinar, the live stream at 4 p.m., which is 1 hour earlier than normal. Because at 5 p.m., my business has an international meeting that I'll need to be part of. So next week will be 1 hour earlier. As always, all of the information is on my website, conorneill.com/live. I'll stick the link in down below. Thank you for connecting here. I think we've had a good Friday. Have a great weekend. Enjoy this beginnings of the summer. take care of yourself. And yeah, as Linda says, consistency. Good word for today. Have a great one. Have a great weekend, Stefan. Good to see you. Chadia, great to see you. Kauto, thank you. Niraj, great. Yeah, Abby, your multitasker, it can often feel productive, and it's very important to distinguish feeling productive from actually being productive. It is possible to feel you're not being productive, but actually being a very good use of time. For me, email is a very curious thing. Email, I can be in email and it feels like I'm being productive, but nothing I'm doing in responding to email is really developing a rare or valuable skill. It's putting me in a better position tomorrow so that I'm starting from a stronger, better place than I am today. Email for me is a very dangerous time sink. It is not something that builds a rare and valuable skill. It's not something that positions you so that tomorrow, in a week, in a year, you're in a stronger place than you are today. It is just treading water, but it can feel like work. So it's a very dangerous thing, email. Gordon, great to have you on here. Venkata, Mark, we're going to hit the end stream. Have a great one.